They say the golden age of American cars is gone. But what if Detroit decided to bring two legends back in 2026? The question hangs in the air like exhaust smoke from a burnout on hot asphalt. Same attitude, same dominance, just built for a new era. These aren't just cars we're talking about. They're monuments to a time when horsepower wasn't measured in efficiency ratings or electric range, but in pure, unfiltered aggression. The kind of machines that made the ground shake and hearts race with just the turn of a key.
In the late 1960s, horsepower wasn't a number, it was a weapon. Detroit was a battlefield, and Ford and Dodge were generals commanding armies of steel, rubber, and raw combustion. Every quarter mile was a declaration of war, every stoplight a potential duel. The streets of America became proving grounds where reputations were built or destroyed in seconds. This wasn't about fuel economy or safety ratings. This was about pure, visceral dominance. Engineers weren't designing transportation. They were crafting mechanical gladiators that would settle arguments the only way that mattered, at full throttle.
The muscle car wars of the late 60s represented something deeper than automotive competition. They embodied the American spirit of excess, power, and unapologetic confidence. Ford and Dodge weren't just selling cars, they were selling dreams of freedom, speed, and rebellion. Young men worked double shifts just to afford these machines, knowing that owning one meant joining an exclusive brotherhood. The roar of a big block V8 wasn't noise pollution, it was the soundtrack of a generation refusing to be quiet, refusing to blend in, refusing to accept limitations. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 wasn't built to cruise, it was built to intimidate. When Ford decided to homologate their new 429 cubic inch V8 engine for NASCAR, they needed to produce a street-legal version, and the Boss 429 was born from pure racing necessity. This wasn't a car designed by committee or focus group for mass appeal. It was engineered by racers for racing, with just enough street legality to satisfy the rulebook. Only 859 units were produced in 1969, making each one a rolling piece of American automotive history.
The heart of the Boss 429 was its semi-hemispherical combustion chamber V8 engine, producing an advertised 375 horsepower, though everyone knew the real number was much higher. Ford deliberately underreported the power to help owners with insurance rates, a common practice in the horsepower wars. The engine was so massive that Ford had to extensively modify the Mustang's engine bay, relocating shock towers and using a thinner apron to accommodate the beast. The suspension was beefed up, the brakes upgraded, and the rear axle strengthened. This wasn't a part spin special. This was serious engineering.
Visually, the Boss 429 was understated aggression. Unlike the flashy stripes and scoops of other muscle cars, the Boss wore its power quietly. Subtle hood scoop, minimal badging, and clean lines that hid the monster underneath. The front end sat slightly higher than stock Mustangs due to the heavy engine, giving it a predatory stance like a big cat ready to pounce. The interior was Spartan, no luxury pretenses here. High back bucket seats, a wood-rimmed steering wheel, and gauges that actually mattered. Every element served a purpose, and that purpose was going fast.
The headlights would be circular LEDs, echoing the original shape but with modern technology. None of this aggressive, angular nonsense, just clean, purposeful circles that glow with intensity. The hood scoop would be functional, feeding air to an intercooler system for the twin-turbocharged V8 hybrid powertrain. Yes, hybrid, but not the kind that sips fuel timidly. This would be a performance hybrid, using electric motors to fill turbo lag and boost low-end torque, while the V8 screams at high RPM. Total system output, 850 horsepower, channeled through an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission with a proper manual mode.
The interior would walk the line between heritage and technology. A digital instrument cluster, yes, but designed with retro fonts and circular gauge graphics that reference the analog past. The center screen would be minimal and integrated smoothly, not a tacky tablet stuck to the dash. Seats would be sculpted for performance, covered in premium leather with contrast stitching. The steering wheel would be smaller, thicker, wrapped in Alcantara with metallic paddle shifters. Everything you touch would feel substantial, crafted, purposeful. No piano black plastic, no fake carbon fiber, just honest materials honestly used.
Performance would be savage but controllable. Adaptive suspension with a classic mode that stiffens the dampers and allows more body roll, mimicking the raw feel of the original. Launch control that could break traction on command. A titanium exhaust with active valves. Quiet mode for neighborhoods, full-throated roar for the open road. 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Quarter mile in 11 seconds flat. But more importantly, it would feel alive, communicative, engaging. The steering would have weight and feedback. The brakes would have bite. Every input would receive a response that reminds you this is a machine designed for driving, not commuting.
The Charger didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. When the 1969 Dodge Charger RT rolled onto the scene, it represented Dodge's answer to the muscle car question. How wide, how powerful, how aggressive can we go? The answer was simple: more. More width, more power, more presence. The Charger RT came standard with the 440 Magnum V8, a 375 horsepower mill that could be optioned up to the legendary 426 Hemi. This wasn't a pony car trying to punch above its weight. This was a full-size brawler with the engine bay space to accommodate truly massive power plants.
The second-generation Charger, introduced in 1968 and perfected in 1969, featured one of the most iconic designs in automotive history. The full-width grille with hidden headlights, the flying buttress C-pillars, the long hood and short deck proportions, every line screamed speed even when standing still. The tunnel-back rear window was a styling masterpiece, creating a fastback profile that looked like it was carved from a single block of metal. At 208 inches long and 76 inches wide, the Charger was a land yacht with the heart of a fighter jet.
The RT badge stood for Road/Track, Dodge's performance designation that promised serious capability both on the street and at the strip. The 440 Magnum featured a high-lift camshaft, dual exhaust, and a 4-barrel carburetor, producing torque figures that would shame modern sports cars. The suspension used heavy-duty torsion bars up front and leaf springs in the rear, calibrated for performance but still compliant enough for daily driving. Inside, the Charger offered surprising luxury for a muscle car: comfortable seats, full instrumentation, and options like air conditioning and a decent stereo. The cultural impact of the Charger cannot be overstated. It became the vehicle of choice for everyone from street racers to Hollywood productions. The general public knew it from film and television, where it played everything from hero car to villain's ride. It represented American automotive excess at its finest. Why build something practical when you could build something legendary? The Charger proved that you could daily drive genuine performance, that muscle cars weren't just drag strip specials, but real vehicles for real people who wanted excitement in their lives.
In 2026, the Charger wouldn't whisper, it would hunt. The reimagined Charger RT would embrace modern performance technology while maintaining the intimidating presence that made the original unforgettable. The body would grow even wider, with flared fenders accommodating massive wheels and tires. The stance would be lower, more planted, with the suspension geometry optimized for both straight-line acceleration and corner carving. The hidden headlight motif would return, updated with LED technology that reveals itself when activated, a nod to heritage with modern execution.
The rear would feature a continuous LED taillight bar that references the original's full-width treatment, but with contemporary execution. When you hit the brakes, the entire bar would glow with intensity, impossible to ignore. The exhaust would exit through quad tips integrated into a functional diffuser, form and function married perfectly. The paint options would include heritage colors with modern metallics, Hemi Orange, Plum Crazy, and B5 Blue, all with depth and richness that vintage paints could never achieve. Every angle would promise violence, controlled but ready to be unleashed.
Under the hood, a supercharged V8 producing 900 horsepower would be the base offering, with an optional hybrid system pushing the total to an obscene 1,000+ horsepower. The supercharger whine would be audible, intentional, a mechanical soundtrack to acceleration that pins you to the seat. But here's the key: a classic drive mode that remaps the throttle response to be more aggressive, stiffens the suspension, and adds more exhaust sound. This mode would sacrifice some efficiency for raw engagement, letting drivers choose between modern refinement and old-school brutality.
The interior would celebrate analog inspiration in a digital world. Thick leather seats in heritage brown with vintage-style perforations and contrast stitchel. The dashboard would feature a large digital display that could switch to classic gauge graphics. Imagine round, chrome-ringed speedometer and tachometer rendered perfectly on screen. Real metal toggle switches for essential functions. A thick-rimmed steering wheel that feels substantial in your hands. The cabin would smell like leather and feel like a cockpit, not a living room. Every surface would be driver-focused, every control placed exactly where you'd expect it.
Technology would serve the driving experience, not dominate it. Adaptive cruise control that you could actually trust. A heads-up display showing only critical information. Surround view cameras for parking a vehicle this wide. But no lane-keeping nannies that fight your inputs. No automatic emergency braking that activates when you don't want it. The Charger would assume you know how to drive and give you the tools to do it well. Performance data logging would be included, letting you review your track sessions or canyon runs, learning and improving with every drive.
The 1960s built legends. 2026 could either erase them or rebirth them. The real question is, would you want them electric or still breathing fire? This isn't about rejecting progress or clinging desperately to the past. It's about recognizing that something was lost in the rush toward efficiency and electrification. The soul of these machines wasn't just in their performance numbers. It was in the experience they provided. The smell of racing fuel, the mechanical symphony of valve train and exhaust, the tactile connection between driver and machine. These elements matter.
Modern technology doesn't have to eliminate emotion. Hybrid systems can enhance performance while maintaining character. Digital displays can honor analog heritage. Manufacturing techniques can deliver reliability without sacrificing engagement. The reimagined Boss 429 and Charger RT wouldn't be museum pieces cosplaying as modern cars. They would be genuinely advanced machines that respect their lineage. They would prove that progress doesn't require abandoning what made us fall in love with cars in the first place. Imagine walking into a Ford or Dodge dealership in 2026 and seeing these machines on the floor, not as limited edition collector pieces priced for billionaires, but as actual production vehicles that regular enthusiasts could aspire to own. Imagine the conversations they would spark, the communities they would build, the memories they would create. Imagine a new generation discovering what it means to feel truly connected to a machine, to experience the thrill that made their parents and grandparents fall in love with American muscle. That's the promise these reimagined legends could deliver.
Critics would say it's impossible, that emissions regulations and safety standards make such vehicles unviable. But engineers said the same thing about the originals, and those cars got built anyway. Determination and creativity can overcome obstacles. The question isn't whether we can build modern muscle cars with soul, it's whether we're willing to try. Whether there's still a market for machines that prioritize driving engagement over autonomous features, raw power over pure efficiency, emotional connection over appliance-like transportation.
If these cars came back tomorrow, which one are you driving? The Boss 429 with its surgical precision and focused intensity? Or the Charger RT with its overwhelming presence and brute force? The beauty is that there's no wrong answer. Both represent different philosophies of performance, different approaches to the same goal, making driving exciting again. The Boss is the scalpel, the Charger is the hammer, and both can reshape your understanding of what cars can be. The 2026 reimagining wouldn't try to recreate the past exactly. That would be impossible and pointless. Instead, it would capture the spirit, the attitude, the promise of those original machines and translate them into a modern context. Better materials, smarter engineering, more refined execution, but the same fundamental purpose, to make you feel alive behind the wheel. To remind you that transportation can be transcendent, that getting from point A to point B can be an experience worth savoring rather than enduring.
These reimagined legends would serve as proof that automotive passion hasn't died, it's just been sleeping. They would demonstrate that there's still a place in the modern world for machines that prioritize driver engagement, that celebrate combustion, that refuse to apologize for being exciting. They would show that you can meet current regulations while still building something that stirs the soul.
They would prove that the golden age of American performance isn't gone. It's just waiting to be rediscovered by people brave enough to build it. The automotive industry stands at a crossroads. One path leads toward homogeneous electric appliances optimized for efficiency and autonomy. The other path, harder, less traveled, more controversial, leads toward machines that remember why we fell in love with cars in the first place. The reimagined Boss 429 and Charger RT represent this second path, a defiant middle finger to the notion that all cars must evolve in the same direction. They represent hope for enthusiasts who refuse to accept that driving must become a passive experience.
So here we stand in 2026, looking back at 1969 and asking ourselves, what if? What if Detroit remembered its roots and dared to build something unapologetically emotional again? What if modern technology enhanced rather than eliminated the characteristics that made these cars legendary? What if there's still a place in the future for machines that roar instead of whisper, that engage instead of isolate, that demand respect instead of apologizing for existing?
The Boss 429 and Charger RT weren't just fast cars. They were statements of intent, declarations of freedom, mechanical manifestations of the American spirit at its most audacious. They represented a time when engineers asked, how much power can we give them, instead of how many miles per gallon can we squeeze out? They came from an era that celebrated excess, that believed more was always better, that understood performance wasn't just about numbers on a spec sheet, but about the experience of driving. Bringing them back in 2026 wouldn't be nostalgia, it would be revolution. It would send a message that there's still demand for vehicles that prioritize excitement, that some people still want to shift their own gears and manage their own throttle, that the future of transportation doesn't have to be sterile and soulless. These reimagined legends would give enthusiasts something to aspire to, would inspire young people to pursue engineering and design careers, would remind the world that American automotive innovation didn't end in the 1960s.
The question isn't whether Detroit should bring back the Boss 429 and Charger RT. The question is, why haven't they already? The technology exists, the heritage is there, the demand is proven by classic car prices and modern muscle car sales. What's missing is courage. The courage to build something that might offend efficiency purists, that might challenge conventional wisdom about where the industry should go, that might actually give people what they want instead of what regulators and analysts think they need. If you're reading this and your heart rate increased, if you found yourself imagining the sound of a supercharger whine or the sight of those reimagined designs, then you understand. You get it. You're part of the community that refuses to let automotive passion die quietly. You're someone who believes that cars can still be more than transportation, that they can be partners in adventure, extensions of personality, sources of joy. You're someone who would choose combustion and character over compliance and quietude. The reimagined 2026 Boss 429 and Charger RT may never exist outside of imagination and digital renderings, but the fact that we can envision them, that we can articulate exactly what they should be, proves that the spirit of those original legends hasn't died. It lives on in every enthusiast who refuses to accept that driving must become a passive activity, in every engineer who still dreams of building truly exciting machines, in every person who looks at a classic muscle car and feels something stir in their chest. So which one would you choose? The precision instrument that is the Boss 429, or the overwhelming force that is the Charger RT? The answer matters less than the fact that you're choosing, that you care, that you're engaged, that you understand these machines represent something more than metal and horsepower. They represent freedom, possibility, and the uniquely American belief that more is more, that power is good, that exciting is better than efficient. The golden age of American muscle cars may be in the rearview mirror, but that doesn't mean the road ahead has to be boring. Technology advances, regulations change, but human desire for excitement remains constant. The Boss 429 and Charger RT proved that you could build production vehicles that delivered genuine performance and character. A 2026 version could prove that modern engineering can enhance rather than eliminate those qualities, that progress and passion aren't mutually exclusive. The legends are calling. They're asking whether you want to remember what made them great or experience what they could become.
They're challenging you to imagine a future where cars still matter, where driving is still an event, where getting behind the wheel means something more than summoning a transportation pod. They're offering you a choice between accepting the autonomous electric future we're told is inevitable or demanding something better, something more engaging, something that makes you feel alive.
If Detroit is listening, and they should be, the message is clear. We haven't forgotten. We remember the Boss 429's dominance, the Charger RT's presence, and the era they came from. We remember when American cars ruled the world, not through efficiency metrics, but through sheer audacious power. We remember when driving was something to look forward to, not something to delegate to computers. We remember, and we're ready for a reminder of why we fell in love with cars in the first place.
The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 and Dodge Charger RT weren't just transportation. They were freedom machines, dream enablers, personality amplifiers. They were proof that American engineering could produce world-class performance without European refinement or Japanese reliability as prerequisites. They were unapologetically American in their excess, their power, their presence. And in 2026, we need that spirit more than ever. The courage to build something exciting, the confidence to ignore critics, the vision to see that the future doesn't have to be boring.
So when someone asks you whether the golden age of American cars is really gone, you can answer with confidence. Only if we let it be. Only if we accept that progress means homogenization, that modern means soulless, that efficient means boring. But if we demand better, if we support companies willing to build exciting machines, if we refuse to let automotive passion die quietly, then the golden age isn't over. It's just getting started. The Boss 429 and Charger RT showed us what's possible. A 2026 version could show us what's next. They say you can't go home again, but maybe you don't have to go back. Maybe you can take what made home special and build something new with it. That's what the reimagined Boss 429 and Charger RT could be. Not replicas or nostalgia pieces, but evolved versions of beloved legends. Same spirit, new execution. Same attitude, modern capability. Same dominance, future battlefield. The question isn't whether it's possible, it's whether anyone has the courage to try.
If these cars came back tomorrow, truly reimagined for 2026, with respect for heritage and excitement for the future, they wouldn't just sell, they would inspire. They would prove that there's still a place in the modern world for machines that make your heart beat faster, that connect driver to road, that celebrate the joy of driving. They would demonstrate that the future of transportation doesn't have to be sterile, that technology can enhance rather than replace the human element, that sometimes the best way forward is to remember why we started the journey in the first place.
The legends are waiting. The question is simple. Which one are you driving? And maybe more importantly, what are you willing to do to make sure cars like these still exist in 2026 and beyond? The answer starts with refusing to accept boring. It continues with supporting companies and products that prioritize engagement. And it ends with you, behind the wheel of something that roars, something that responds, something that reminds you why humans and machines make such good partners when the machine is built right.